had a
Well,
cup of coffee, so
so you're up, you're hyped, you're ready. Okay, I'm going to have a chat that's going to be really very interesting with composer Daniel S. Gill, Daniel Gill. We're going to kind of not exactly start the conversation, but the impetus was a 2003 Navona Records compilation album. It's a beautiful thing they do with these compilation albums, I think, on which is your first string quartet, Peacemaking, in three movements from 2021. And so we're going to kind of, by the way, the Navona Records album is called Quadrants Volume 4. So, there have been previous volumes and so on. It's just a great idea. Um, and in this case, the performance of the Peacemaking in three movements is by the string quartet Invoke. Nice. I mean, I don't know how much choice you had there because I think is Invoke the only quartet on that album? I can't quite remember, but there are a whole lot of people involved. Go
there's a
ahead,
bunch.
Dan. You want to clear
Yeah,
anything
there's a
up?
bunch. I think there's a bunch of quartets. The Sirius Quartet is on there. I
Yeah,
think
that's right. Yeah,
the
as
Harlem
I recall,
Quartet.
and
I
I'm just
think.
looking.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember all of them,
Um,
but Invoke's a
But
really
it's nice, and
interesting.
they play your piece very very well indeed. Okay, so we're talking with Daniel Gill. Let's do a little the little resume thing very briefly. Composer, ethnomusicologist. Now that's where my radar went up. In curiosity, producer, orchestrator, all that good stuff, performer. Graduate of Berklee School, College of Music. I hope I always pronounce that with that little little extra because it's not really Berkeley, as in California, it's
It's
Berklee.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
College of Music, and you hold an MFA in composition from Vermont College of Fine Arts. In other words, the training's there, okay? We and you've made the questionable decision to pursue a career, as have we all. I always go, why? Anyway, what I want to know because of this ethnomusicology and also your music as we discussed before beginning, your music is very much influenced by your uh, Judaic beliefs and by narratives and storytelling and all of that good stuff. Um, again, the radar went up when I started seeing this stuff about the Kisselhoff archive. Now, maybe I'm the last person on earth to hear about it, but tell us about this. It's a folk archive that you yourself have found and discovered and resurrected and stuff. Go, Daniel.
Yeah, it's an interesting and somewhat controversial subject, simply because of like where it is in the world and how it got there. So it has its own story, which started in the early 20th century or the late 19th century with some Jewish students, most likely students of Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. And as you know, in that time period,
Interesting.
yeah, nationalism was big, and folk songs, and it was a very important kind of way composers were writing and being influenced by their heritage. And so these students, the story goes, were encouraged by Korsakov, who uh, had heard some Jewish tunes and told his students, these are really great. You guys should like do something with this in your classical music. So they went and they formed this society of, what was it? The Society of Jewish Music in Tsarist Russia or something like that.
That's
And
dangerous. Go ahead.
yeah, right. Yes, totally. Yeah. And it's also fascinating in that, you see, the great Rimsky-Korsakov was, very open and, I would say very cool and very progressive, it seems like, for where he lived, you
So,
know. It is actually a big deal that he encouraged them. If again, this is apocryphal, but I think it rings true. So these students got together and they raised some money and they hired a choral archivist or a choral director named Kisselhoff or Kisselgoff, and pronounced different ways. And they
deciding
hired
which
him,
side of the check border you're on or something like
right,
that? Yeah. Okay.
depending before or after which war. And and so he was kind of, I mean, this is how I look at it. This story is how I look at it. Is that he was kind of the adult, And so he went with them on this expedition they got funding for, and
Nice.
they took Edison wax cylinders and they went through the Pale of Settlement and
Wow.
eastern and through Eastern Europe, very far east actually. They reached the stands, so to speak,
Wow. Wow.
and they had wax cylinders, Edison wax cylinders, that they recorded on. People would come out, and they brought back thousands of these wax cylinders, and the students at the university, uh, you know, transcribed them and hand transcribed all these wax cylinders. And there's about 1,600 pages or more.
I've seen the photocopies of the hand transcriptions. Yeah.
Yeah,
In looking at the Kesselhoff archive. Yeah.
yeah, pretty interesting. And so they're pretty good transcriptions. So anyway, along came the communists in the after World War I and the revolution, and this this whole notion of Jewish ethnography and was just squashed. I mean, Ansky is in between that time period. We have Ansky did a subsequent ethnographic expedition in the I don't know, like 1913 or something like that. And there was a whole group of people. Their idea was to uh, combine Jewish theater, music, and art. So you have Aaron Copland was part of this society. In
Hmm.
this was the later society in the teens.
Yeah, I
So
saw his name pop up somewhere today when I was kind of contemplating all of this. But now, he flew
yeah,
by, and now I understand. Interesting.
yeah, so they
Very
wanted
interesting.
Ansky was going to write the plays. Chagall, some of his famous works are the backdrops to a
Of
theater
course.
production they
Yeah.
did, and then Copeland was writing some of the music, and they had a whole thing going, and
Oh,
then
yeah, that's starting to ring bells now. Thank you. Kind of
yeah,
almost before or between the first and second, whatever, revolution, 1905 and 19, whatever, 14, something
exactly,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and then so then whatever the communists squashed this whole thing. There were still some ethnographers that went around who wrote a couple books, but the Kisselgoff archive was in some cellar, and it ended up in a cellar in Kiev. Uh,
Interesting.
Yeah, and then for a long time, and then finally, I'm not sure when it ended up at the University of Kiev archives there, but it ended up there. And again, this I'm not sure if this is a popular opinion, but this is what it is. At the time when I had heard about this archive, it was impossible to get to, um, and especially if you look Jewish. I mean, that's what it was.
What are we, 70s, 80s? What are you talking in
No,
terms of?
this is like 2005, 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty, I was told that, I mean, at the time, I mean, I'm not wearing a yarmulke now, but at the time I was told if I showed up the way I was looking, with a yarmulke and I looked very observant, that it would be dangerous for my life.
Mm.
Uh, so I hired someone I paid them to basically let me take pictures of it
Oh,
via
sorry.
someone else.
I thought you were going to say something about I hired somebody to push push
Yeah,
toward
to go
Kiev.
in. Yeah, no, no, no. I
Here, get
didn't.
the papers and hurry back, please.
Yeah,
Anyway.
right. Run back. No, so someone took pictures of it for me,
Yeah.
and as far as
Nice.
I'm concerned, it was all above board. They wanted a certain amount of money for access,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
gave them, and so then I had it, and my goal was just to because it's a kind of a national treasure because it's or an international treasure really because it documents, you know, life pre World War One life in Jewish Eastern Europe.
Which is kind of a diaspora, even among
Yeah.
Jews in Eastern Europe. I mean, something I was trying to find a way to use that word, but
Yeah, it was definitely the Eastern European diaspora, and
okay,
they had been there for about 1,000 years, almost undisturbed in a way. And then World War One happened, and many of the communities were displaced. And then,
sure,
of
yeah,
course, World War Two happened, and most of them were destroyed.
yeah.
Um, and so it's like this kind of historical treasure, and I just wanted to get it somewhere where it's not just sitting in an archive somewhere in a basement in the University of Kiev library. So what ended up happening is the uh, a friend of mine who's a professor of Jewish music um, came to see what I had, and because I told him you got to come check this out, and he's I won't say who it is, whatever. But anyway, he ended up coming over, and he was just like, blown away. He was like, "This is the." He knew exactly what it was. This is the real thing. I can't believe you got this. And eventually, word got back to the University of Kiev that someone had it, and it made them look bad. And
Oh
so,
dear, it's getting dirty now. Oh
yeah, and
boy.
so they subsequently released the latter half of it, which is the
Oh,
lesson,
okay.
which is great,
I
but it's
see.
also,
No, yeah, yeah. So they made up for the. Okay, got it. Well, so that
yeah,
was a good outcome, even.
a very good outcome because so
Yeah.
now everyone has access to half of it. So what I'm in kind of the middle of doing now is I'm putting the first half up now on my website. And then what I'm kind of using the impetus of putting it on my website to reorganize it so that it makes sense according to the original one of the original numbering systems.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm
So, do
about
I assume the Rothschild grant has come in, and you're going to be able to do this over the next 23 years? Good
yeah, right.
God. Well,
Right.
just
Yeah.
looking at the photographs, the manuscript looks very, very clear and understandable. And they are
Yeah.
very simple, if you'll forgive me that idea,
Yes.
uh, tunes. And
Yep.
that kind of leads me to segue back to why we're having a chat here, which is that
Yep.
my overall impression, it's really, really hard to describe, my takeaway of who you are as a composer and where you come from, you will help me to understand better. But is extremely accessible, extremely meditative, extremely beautiful, beautiful music making, and so on. So my question is, how many of the tunes, if you will, that I heard listening to much of your music are from Kisselhoff, or are they from your own head, or what? How have you used that archive, if at all?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, the Mystical Awakening is
Mm.
all archival material, kind of reworked or recomposed.
Yeah, I see. Sure, of course it would.
That's an older piece. It's pretty straight ahead in a way, although the harmonies are interesting, I think. Um, and some of the tech, I think the textures are nice. In peacemaking in specific, um, everything is mine except in the third movement. That's actually an old Moroccan Spanish chant.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm
Well,
in this synagogue
the
in
cultural similarities, even the Moorish, Jewish. I mean, the whole thing is like, why are we not all friends? I just don't
yeah.
understand it.
I agree. I
It's like
couldn't
we're all
agree more.
cousins. The whole of world human culture has really pretty much exactly the same beliefs and things. Yeah, I mean sounds and tunes and
Yeah,
processes and all the rest. Well,
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, where are we? Where do we want to plunge in? I think people are starting to get an idea uh, so let's just talk about peacemaking in three movements.
Sure.
This first
Yeah,
quartet of yours, and I want to list the three movements because they are, if I understand properly, three stories from the Kabbalah. And I want to know because I'm a Gentile, what all this means. Okay,
yeah,
but the movements are the steps of Jabal Musa. The second movement is a tower that floats in the air, which with word assemblies like that from any culture sends the imagination off into whole other worlds. And then the last movement, the King David, and I think a lot of that is probably quite explanatory. But give us an overview of that piece, this first string quartet.
sure.
It's about what 17, 18 minutes altogether. I can't
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
just about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think yeah.
And by
I'm
the
gonna.
way, everything that I've seen of yours, you are really much involved in words,
Yeah,
titles, words, texts, and so on. Okay, go.
yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I just to jump ahead for 1 second.
Sure.
The second string quartet is without any folk music. It's really from my head. Interesting enough. Just to jump ahead, I
Thank you,
will.
because it was actually, now you mention it, pretty obvious. We talked. I listened to that second
Yeah,
quartet, and it's like, worlds and continents, so the two quartets away from each other in a way, except they are both very beautiful. The second quartet also has some just some glorious, beautiful very, the word is so overused. I'm almost guilty about it, but accessibility is important for an
Yeah,
audience. For a heart, for a mind, accessibility is what it's all about. For a composer to access
yeah,
uh, those, you know what I mean, those tender responses in human beings. So,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
that's a beauty, that second quartet.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of the things with this one, I started off. One of the things I'm always concerned about with concert music and music in general, but especially concert music, because it represents, to my mind, it's like one of the best things about the world is concert music, classical music. It's so beautiful, and I want to make it both accessible but with depth and integrity.
Bingo.
That's one of my main goals in my writing, is to not sacrifice my own mind for the sake of accessibility and not sacrifice accessibility for the sake of my own mind.
Thank you.
Like,
That is beautifully put, and that's exactly why I worry a little bit about that word accessibility, as important as I think it is at an intellectual level.
yeah,
Because that's the whole idea of art, is to be accessible, is to
yeah,
get to people, to get into their heads and into their minds and souls. So
yeah,
so you got the right formulas, okay? But
yeah.
again,
So,
compared to the first quartet, again, let's see, linger a little bit longer with this three
yeah, sure.
movement first quartet and these three
Yeah,
stories.
yeah,
I guess my overview. Hang on, let me go down and see what I said here. My kind of overview. It's it's there are interesting little harmonic things that happen, but this ecclesiastical, if you'll even maybe forgive the expression, but
no,
ambiance, I can't, or whatever, vibrant, whatever you put out, and that's got to be one of the most powerful emotions to put before an audience's brain.
yeah,
Talk to me a little bit about that, because
sure.
all three movements have something, have a beautiful,
Yeah,
have a beauty to them, or something.
yeah.
You tell me.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you. These are three stories that happened to me while I was traveling in the Middle East. So I was traveling in Israel and Egypt.
So it's personal. I'm
Very
amazed.
personal. Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
it was just from scripture or something.
So it's one of the things I find amazing is when, you know, there's a great statement. I forgot where it's from. Someone said it sometime. There is no king without a people, right?
Okay, I
without
believe that.
without separation. So meaning if human beings don't take faith and ideas of faith and integrate them in their lives and find personal meaning in them, then it's useless.
Okay,
We need
makes
another
sense.
set of intellectual dogmas that
Yeah, yeah,
everyone has to adhere to. Like we need that. Like we need a
gotcha.
home head. You know what I mean? Like what we need is meaning. People need meaning, and so what my life has based on a lot of different experiences I've had is finding those connections to meaning in my own life, and then I trying to translate that into my music. So these are three stories. The Steps of Jabal Musa is a if I can tell you the quick. Uh,
Sure, of course, because I think I've seen a picture. I tried to track this stuff down and figure out what was going on. Is there a steps of? There
yes,
sure is, isn't there? Down that
yes. So
mountainside,
Jabal
right?
Musa is colloquially known as Mount Sinai,
And I
and
was
there,
confused about that. I wasn't. So
yeah,
those are the steps up and down Mount Sinai. Perhaps Moses may have trekked that passageway
there.
or something.
Well, someone made a very long time ago steps on the side of this mountain, kind of scary steps, honestly,
No,
like
I'm too old.
very,
I saw. I'm too old.
yeah, very not enjoyable and just a drop. And so I go up there and I think how old was I? I was like 19 years old, and I'm with this Egyptian tour guide Ahmed, and nice guy, good tour guide. We're having okay. But I brought my prayer shawl up there. I didn't even really know what I was doing,
Oh.
and I was going to pray the afternoon prayer. And I took out my prayer shawl, and the tour guide, who hadn't really paid attention to me before, walks over to me, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to say, the Hebrew afternoon prayer." And he said, "Well, is this your prayer shawl?" And I said, "It is indeed my prayer shawl." He said, "Wow." He said, "That's very interesting. I've heard that Jews use prayer shells, and that's amazing. I've never seen one." So he said, "I'll tell you what. I don't want to disturb you or rush you. Everyone else
Nice.
is ready to go down. I will go get and leave a guide for you at the bottom of the stairs."
Oh, that is an amazing response. Was not expecting that.
Unbelievable. So I said, "Thank you very much." So
About
I
harmony between religions. It's there. It's just been mutilated in the past several
yeah,
hundreds of
by
years.
small-minded, angry
Exactly.
people
Yes.
mostly. So Ahmed was a very nice man, very clearly very well educated. I know in Egyptian society, actually, to be a tour guide, you
Mm.
have to be really, really well educated and well put together. So sure enough, I pray, I say the afternoon prayer. There was no one up there that I could see, and I had this amazing moment, where it was absolutely silent. Like,
Ooh.
I mean, completely silent, nothing except for the wind when it would come up. It was really something, no planes, no highway in the background.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking at these like metallic
Spiritual
mountains.
indeed.
Yeah,
Spiritual
wild,
indeed. Yeah.
So I made it down by the skin of my teeth because it was starting to get dark. Reality interrupted my spiritual experience and said,
To be 19.
"Yeah, you should go down the mountain now." So I went down, and sure enough, he left a guide for me, and
Sweet.
we
Very
walked
sweet.
back wasn't an Israeli guide, interestingly enough. And when I got back, this is where it gets really magical. When I got back to where we were eating, we're going to eat and then sleep. I walk in, there's this big table, and there's one seat open, and it's next to Ahmed, the tour guide. And he motions me over and he says, "Daniel, come sit down. I saved you a seat. I'd love to talk to you more." So we sat and we ate and we had this amazing
Nice.
conversation about spirituality and God and Islam and Judaism and these different connections that we found, so many things alike. It was that already would be enough of a story. But the real story comes the next morning. So we went to the monastery there, Santa Caterina, which is a beautiful old
Is that
monastery.
Orthodox? An
Yeah,
Orthodox? Yeah.
I think it is. I think yeah, it
Must
is
be
because there
Orthodox.
are very old icons there. Um, and afterwards, we're getting ready to go back on the bus, and everyone's going to get water because it's Sinai. It's very dry and very hot and very dry heat. You have to constantly drink. So I'm going to get water with everyone, and Ahmed says, "Daniel, here, come with me." I said, "Okay." So I walk over with Ahmed, and we go around this huge rock, you know, and and there's the local store where the tourists don't get their water. And he says, "Come," he said, "It's really expensive over there. Come over here."
Nice. Nice, nice,
So so
nice.
we so I walk in, okay, and I'm the only non-Egyptian, non-Muslim in the store, and it was like someone stopped the record, and everyone in the store turned and looked at me, and I was like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah.
And Ahmed turns to him and says, "No, it's okay. He's a believer."
Ah,
And it was like that. It was like I was like completely fine. No one. It was like, "Oh, okay, fine,
yeah.
no problem."
And also the word believer is so interesting because two really two different, you'll allow that, religions do in fact have the same belief structures. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, fascinating.
Anyway, so that's the first story.
Okay,
That's the first move, and so that's the first movement.
okay.
Da dee da dee dum.
That's
That's
the two.
the
That's why
mountain.
I was wondering. But that's your own
Yeah,
tune, huh? That's
yeah.
your own tune?
That's my own theme, and
Oh,
I took out the cello, and I play a little bit.
oh, that's it. Aha.
I'm
See,
trained on the violin. I studied with
I
a
hated
student
it.
of David Oistrakh actually.
Oh,
So I got a good training on the violin, and so it translates to a lot of different instruments actually. But so I took out the cello and I just was playing around and trying to. I said, what is like a mountain?
mm-hmm.
And then I just came up with the fifth, and then the level
Uh-huh, yeah,
push
yeah,
on
yeah,
top,
yeah, yeah.
and
Nice.
uh, and then everything else kind of flew out from there. And then the dee da da dee dee da da dee dum, that tune is supposed to be like the silence on the mountain, or this
Uh-huh. So it's very
uh,
programmatic in your
in a way, yeah.
structuring of it. Yeah, in your
Yeah,
head, if you
in
will.
my structuring, definitely. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always encourage anyone who's going to listen, you should find your own meaning in it. It could be anything you may think of, but that was my intention, and to a
I'm glad you
degree.
clarified about the tunes because they are so Judaic. Help me on this. You know what I mean? They're so plaintive and so beautiful, and within maybe even certain modes, even you know, got me a little bit there. But what I'm saying is, I got so focused on this archive when I first
Mhm,
started spending my day with you, so to say,
mhm.
that I'm glad because I thought, oh, that's it. The whole and you know everything is from this archive in some way, shape, or form. But
But yeah,
good.
it's no, it's I mean it's not this tune. This tune is really more interestingly enough. I think that the second tune at the end of the piece, which I like better in a way than the first theme. I mean, it's great. I like both of them, but it's just the second tune is a development really
Oh,
of the concept, and I think it actually is that tune. Well, it just kind of obviously just kind of came to me, but I think it's more. I think it's more Anglican in a way. It very much reminds me of something I might hear Vaughan Williams write or something in the British school, which I'm
stop,
a huge fan. Yeah.
stop, because you have just nailed what was not in my head just now, but you nailed something else I've noticed during the day. Remember, I used the word ecclesiastical.
Yeah.
In other words, you do create these, you know, Gothic cathedrals of sound. It just, you know, what I'm trying to say is this mix of all that. So, yes,
Yeah.
this Anglican thing. You
Yeah.
got, you know, okay. It's just
Yeah.
so interesting how we're composers in particular, but you know, hit upon what they want to speak to within the framework of whatever they're working with or have experience with. That made no sense at all, but I hope you've got some idea of what I was
I got
trying to say.
I got it. I mean, there's something. I mean, again, people say it all the time, but it's really true. I mean, there's a deep universality to music,
Hmm.
and obviously it expresses itself through different lifetimes of different
Yeah,
composers
yeah.
and different listeners, and
Mhm.
but there is, especially as a composer, I feel like you have to open up to this deep, I don't know, universal intelligence. I'm not sure how to say it, but this deep something that's not entirely you, and you have to draw on your entire life and all your experiences and your current where you are and also where you want to go.
And just the
Uh,
commonality
yeah,
of tonality, if you will, just to speak to our area
sure,
of the arts, uh,
sure,
that certain just tonalities, certain just combinations of three or four notes are universally experienced in the same emotional way. And I think that's just
yeah,
incredibly profound. So we have quite a responsibility. So I
yeah,
salute you on that.
I agree.
What else do we? I think we've just about finished. We didn't really discuss the third movement. Do you want to throw a little bit in there?
Yeah, I mean, both of these are they're another two stories. The tower that floats in the air is actually an experience I had at the YMCA in Jerusalem, which is this big tower. It's this
Oh,
beautiful tower.
really?
Yeah.
So you nearly drowned.
Well,
Okay, now
yeah,
about.
it was an interesting insight. I had
But
again another conversation, another interesting.
yeah, but I mean,
Uh,
you know, interestingly, and speaking to seriously what you have said, it's that's the magic I always find with composers. The when excuse me, when you finally nail them against the wall and pin them down and try and get them, you know, slug them out and try and get some answers out of them, they're crazy answers. It's like, oh, well, that second movement's all about my experience at the YMCA in Jerusalem in 1983. I mean, what? I'm supposed to be having an epiphanic, if that's the right word, experience in that second movement, let's say, for example,
yeah.
and I'm so moved, and then you tell me the stories about, you know, I'm
Well,
being silly, but
yeah, no. Well,
fascinating.
what's funny is the way it translates. It is
Mm.
just crazy. So it was this. I'm sitting in the YMCA trying. It was really hot and I was really hungry and really thirsty. And I'm sitting in the YMCA and I ordered this big beautiful Greek salad and a big thing of water. I'm set to go. I got my fork, and this lady walks over to me and she's wearing a full like burqa, I guess you would call
Uh-huh,
it,
uh-huh.
and Muslim lady. And she sits down, whips off the burqa, and says, "Can I talk with you? You look like a nice person."
I'm a
And
member of the secret police. Come with
yeah,
me.
no,
I
just
mean,
it was just like I was like, it's about.
huh?
I'm
What
like,
is it? It's
I'm
got
like,
to be the
okay,
beard. I think it's the
So yeah,
goatee.
it's just something about my face. People want to talk to me or something.
Yeah.
So sometimes, uh, or they want to run away. I don't know. No. So anyway, so I this lady sits down. She's talking, and she has kind of a sad story. Her husband's abusive, and
Wow.
she's got a really sad story. And
Sad fiddle tune I see here in my notes about that second movement. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and so it was but she said something amazing. She said, um, I don't think there can be peace until we all learn to speak the same language and understand the intentions. And so I thought, well, wow, that's really this concept of the inner light, this concept of
Mm,
a culture, what a culture encapsulates, how they speak. And so I think again, the first pillar of making peace is spiritual connection. We have to learn to connect and understand the commonalities. And then the second level is cultural understanding. We have to learn the distinctions and learn to listen to each other to get a feel for what the other person is
yeah.
without judgment.
But it's
And
not as though it wasn't there. So it's about remembering
yeah,
how we used to be. I think I can't help but think of
yeah,
the Balkan states. Balkan states,
yeah.
Montenegro, Serbia, Croatia,
Well,
that neck of the woods on the
yeah,
Adriatic. Uh, and remember that horrible war in whatever the 90s. Uh,
yeah,
um, but here were states, if you will, in former Yugoslavia. But the minarets were there, the Catholic churches were there, the Orthodox. I mean, everybody was happy, and then somebody, and I guess I really have to pin it on politicians, perhaps, and
yeah.
egomaniacs. But anyway, it's just too bad. So it's about remembering how once upon a time, at least periodically, we all got along. That's what's his face.
Yeah, well, and there has to we have to learn to understand and respect each other, and it's complex, and so
It seems
that
a
was
no-brainer to me. I'm a very
I
progressive
agree.
person. It just seems like such a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't
I
understand
agree with
not
you as
being
well.
interested in others and other cultures and stuff. I don't find anything intimidating about it whatsoever.
Mm.
So anyway,
Oh,
um,
you're open-minded. It's great. It's amazing.
let's see now. Hang on.
So
This well. Okay. So
so
I'm trying to get wade through my notes here about these things. Where are we? How do you want to go? Because I'm about
yeah,
ready to jump in at a couple of the wonderful pieces
sure.
that
Let's
you
go.
have
Yeah, whatever
that
you
you
have, that's
well
totally
you sent me some links, and
yeah,
remember
100%. Yeah,
the
yeah.
first string quartet is the point of my written review that will go up on the page with our interview and so on at Performing Arts Review. And as you know, there'll be all the stuff, the links into your website and all that good stuff to buy the CD and such, or the
Thank
album
you.
stuff like that.
Thank you.
So, and as I mentioned, there I was with one piece, the first quartet, so I needed to get some idea who you are. And so, of course, the first thing I listened to, as I told you before we taped, is the string quartet number two.
Yeah,
Uh, Fascinating, complex, dissonant, so completely not the peacemaker sensibility I'm saying initially. These are my
yeah,
initial, these are stream of
yeah, yeah,
consciousness stuff.
yeah.
Because it was just such a shocker. And then it starts to get even more interesting, that whole tremolo section. Fabulous, the energy. I just loved it. As I mentioned, little harmonic gotchas here and there that are fun. Um, and solo fiddle piece. And that's a double stop thing, right? That solo fiddle toward the end. I think it's just one. I can't. Can you
Yeah,
remember?
there's that one. Yeah, he
And
does.
it's
Yeah, that's what sets up the fugue.
and he.
There's a little
Oh,
mini
okay.
fugue in there. Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of sets that
Did
up.
you
And then
say fugue? I'm gonna have
yeah,
to re-listen to that movement. Are you
yeah, it's
kidding me?
yeah,
Holy mo, Uncle
yeah,
Jack,
yeah.
or to that quartet. So it's through composed as one movement, the number two
It's one.
quartet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one piece, and it's really
Huh.
it's in it's 8 parts really.
Oof.
Uh, no, it's 8 or 9. Wait, let me think for a second. God. Um, Yeah, no, it's 8 parts. Yeah, it's 8 parts. Yeah, and they're the inner workings and the structure of this. This is very formal,
You
incredibly.
just told me there's a fugue in there somewhere. That went
Yeah,
sailing right over my head. And the other thing, when you mentioned 8 parts, it's
yeah,
kind of an overview I've taken away out. It's worth my throwing at you anyway. I keep hearing episodes
yeah, yeah,
in
absolutely.
lots of your music, episodes, and they
Yeah,
actually come to a conclusion of some sort, and then you realize you're moving into another space, another identity, another bit of narrative, and so on. So, uh,
yeah. Yeah,
fascinating.
these are interesting in that they all like they're weird versions of each other. They're all these reflective pieces.
Ooh,
So
nice.
that the first so I the first like melody or theme I wrote is the last thing you hear in the second string quartet. And what I did is
Hmm.
from there, like the first part is the kind of inner harmonics of that melody. So I took all of the implied, or many of the implied harmonics, and I just sat and I wrote pages and pages of what are those notes, what are the harmonics of the melody.
Now, this
And
is what I hate about composers.
yeah,
Those of you also who are composers out there, you all love this stuff, don't you? It just, I would never sit down for 18 hours plotting out the detailed minutia of the structure of it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just like, get out of here. But
right. No, thank you. No, that's it. I was great. It was great fun. And then the
yeah.
the slides kind of go between the
Oh, I forgot
different
that.
harmonics
Yeah,
that are
yeah, yeah. I
happening.
remember.
So those are
Yeah.
supposed to trigger what's happening in the other
Uh-huh. Yep.
conflicting. The first and second violin are doing this conflicting thing, and
Uh-huh.
the viola and
Uh-huh.
cello are doing these slides, and they're all working on these different harmonics, which are relating to the last melody. So it's kind of like this hidden, sneaky way of I don't know, taking out this like I don't know the inner guts
Guts.
of yeah of this melody, which I really liked, and then showing what I wanted to show is like how they're connected. So like this really da dee dum da dee dum bum ba dum. It's a very cool, beautiful
Yes, it
song.
is.
But what's amazing to me is in my mind it's exactly the same as the first, just a different perspective. So I want to marry these things, the super intellectual, looking at it with an electron microscope, and then the very simple, very accessible, but hopefully well done with integrity. Uh,
You're all the same. You're all the same. It's just amazing to me how composers' brains work. And they are always complex, the workings. They are also always sneaky. You hide a million and one things in everything. I'm sure you do the same. All composers do, and then they wait a lifetime to see if anybody gets it. I mean, it
right.
just drives me crazy. What discipline! Let's talk about this original work for Baroque Ensemble that you dedicated to your kids,
Yeah.
Three Little Wizards. And I
Yeah.
ask myself, and you before you go off on this one, I ask myself, why didn't anybody else ever think of this? And surely other composers in the 20th and 21st century have have created pieces in using Baroque instruments. Anyway, I was blown away. I saw the video. I'm going to put it up. It's just and it's so charming. You never sacrifice period. You know what I'm trying to say? It's
Yeah.
very Baroque,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
very your own original work. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Go ahead, talk to me about the Little Wizards.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, my goal was to write a piece that has some contemporary harmonic ideas,
Okay, yeah, I buy
uh,
that. Yes,
but within a Baroque ensemble, and keeping to the idiomatic nature of how they play and what they like to play. I think that's if
that's
you
the word. Yeah, idiomatic. That's the
yeah,
beauty word.
it's it's so key because then everyone's happy. Whoever you write for, you should talk to them and see what do they want to play because it's they're
And
you
it's
know
collaborative,
it's
after all, really.
collaborative.
Come
I
on.
mean, and so they told me, what they like playing, and they basically said, please don't put any tone rows in there. Like, just please don't, like, please, like, we can do it, but we don't really like it. It's not what we do best. We want to shine. And so no problem.
It's a
So I
beauty.
wrote, no,
It's
thank
really a
you.
beauty. Yeah, it's
Oh,
just a
thank you so
just a beauty of
much.
piece. I can't remember. I only had a little afternoon with you here,
Yeah,
but the point is I can't quite put my finger on it, except just again to say it's just a beauty. And I'm trying to remember, how it's shaped in my head as I listen to it. It's just wonderful, and I had the impression from even watching the video that the musicians were having a wonderful time. They understood where you were coming from and what you were doing, and they also understood who they were, if you will, your homage to that period and so on,
yeah,
for lack of decent words. But
yeah,
anyway, it's a really a delight, and I keep thinking now there's a piece that should be performed quite a lot, frankly.
thank you.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's the combination of the three instruments that's a little. There's Baroque violin, there's the thurbo, I think, the big
Yes,
long
the orbo,
handle.
yeah, that big thing,
And
yeah.
then and then a gamba, I guess, in the middle,
Yeah.
as I
Yeah.
recall. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I mean,
So
it could be anyone with a continuo or any ensemble with a
yeah, and it's not.
continuo.
I don't want to sound incorrect here, but it's not difficult.
No,
It's not difficult to prepare and perform
no.
at public performances this little delightful piece of yours. So I'll for sure put that video
Well,
on.
thank
I
you
thought it
so
was marvelous.
much. Yeah, I
Um,
appreciate it.
and then I love saxophone quartet because it seems in
Oh,
the past
yeah.
10 years, I don't know why, but I have been inundated by saxophonists, classical
Oh, interesting.
saxophonists, and
Uh-huh.
they just really are coming out of the woodwork, and especially that sound, that quartet sound. That I mean, I can't. That, I'm thinking I can almost hear not your piece particularly, but I can hear that sound of those four saxophone timbres, if you will. Anyway, it's a beauty.
Thank you.
I don't get what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to remember what's the story here? A question is forever.
Yeah,
Can
so
you give me some
this,
links?
yeah, this is a friend of mine and a mentor, Rabbi Dr. Tzvi Aryeh Yehuda. He passed away some years ago, but he was a really amazing human being, and I just learned so much from him. Very much believed in the human spirit
Mm.
and the human mind as kind of the focal point of faith. And so he came up with some really good ones. So he turned to me one day and he said, you know, we were talking and he said, you know, there are some questions which have just an answer. You know, what time is it? Okay. But there are some questions that outlive their own answers.
Ooh, that gave me the shivers.
Yeah, right. Some questions outlive their answers, and you may get a good answer to a deep question, but the answer is only because it's what you need to hear.
Mm.
And long after we're gone, the question that you asked, if it's a good one, will still be there. And
And you took that and ran with it with a
yeah,
saxophone
yeah,
quartet.
I said, wow, that's a great idea. Yeah, let's do it. And so
How
that,
did you make that idea work with quartet? If you get my, because you're the structured person, you know what I mean,
yeah,
composers
yeah,
are.
making the composition.
How did you get that statement to
Well, I
have
wanted,
meaning? If you get
yeah,
my
I
drift.
wanted to explore, again, like almost like call and response. So you've got this kind of repeating harmonic structure, which is kind of like a question, really.
Okay, yeah, okay,
And
gotcha. The
then you
statement
have,
response thing. Yeah,
yeah, and then it changes though. The harmony gets thicker and thicker
I
and
was
more
just thinking
indistinct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the same with the answers. And then you have improvised, quasi-improvised answers over a static melody. And the those are obviously those are answers of those people in the time when they recorded it, you know, to whatever the question of improvisation is. Well, what do you
Mm.
have to say over the following ideas or within the following parameters? And so that's their answer. But because it's improvisational, you know, if someone plays that piece tomorrow, it'll be a different answer, which is part of the, you know,
Uh-huh,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oof.
yeah,
Love
yeah,
that stuff. Love that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Love it. But also, you have just told me that there are improvisational moments
Yeah,
in that
yeah, and
regard.
so you'll hear
That I was
again this
not clear
kind of
about, of course.
this
Yeah,
chord these chord changes, and then you'll hear a melody.
yeah.
First, very simple, just one, and then with some different harmonic elements, and someone improvises over that. And I wrote in chord changes for them, just to
I
give them a
see.
little.
Yeah,
Again, it's my idea. I always want to involve everyone. You know, I want to give everyone a part in whatever I write,
sure.
including myself, and including the players, and of course including the audience. So um, so you have that structure, and then you have the kind of it kind of opens up into like, well, okay, that was interesting. We have questions and answers, and then questions with answers on top of them. Fine, but then we have like the big question, you know, like which is like it's this interesting timepiece, you know,
Oh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
and
I'm
that's
trying
like
to
a
remember that now. Okay, now I
that's like a
see. Yes.
what is that? Like that's a big question. Like what? And that was the difficult part for the players. They were able to do it, but it was like it was hard, and I wanted it to be difficult and questioning and strange harmony and a little bit and I wanted it followed by a much larger answer where there's a lot more going on, a lot more
The
intense. And then the piece ends on a like on a it doesn't end with a resolution. It does not resolve. The piece does not
Of
resolve.
course not. It's the unanswered question. You know that. Anyway, fascinating what you've just described about structures
Yeah.
and about how you work out intellectually a structure that suits the emotional messaging, if you will, something like that.
What there is this is I just a quick
Yeah,
a little instance you have me here.
of
There
course.
it turns out I get in sometimes really deep, like numerical values. So the numerical value of the amount of measures
Stop me. No,
ended up
no,
being a question in Hebrew, which
no.
yeah,
That's
which is
incredible.
yeah, which is mapea, which means what is it? What is the concept of leaving a corner of your leaving the a corner of your field for the poor? That was a number. That was the number
Let me
that
jump in.
yeah,
Let me jump
which
in
is
as
the
the not as the outsider on all of this.
yeah
But I am so fascinated by the word Kabbalah.
yeah
Is there mathematics to even that word? What I'm trying to say is the whole thing is all math. The whole religion maybe even is a Kabbalistic. I hope that's so I'm not getting in
yeah
trouble
yeah
yet.
no you're
Construct which is mathematics as much as anything else. Kind of
absolutely. It turns out a lot of it is geometrically based. There's
Yeah,
a
so
there,
there you go.
yes
So the things we still don't know about,
yeah, there's a lot
if you get my drift, there's
yeah
stuff
totally
right in our faces that we're beginning to cipher, and I think the
yeah
word is correct to cipher. Um,
absolutely
and there's still so much more.
yeah
It's great. So
yeah
we'll find out one of these days we were brought here. Okay, now the Creation Overture. And
oh
then I
yeah
think we'll wind it down. And also I listened to the first movement of Mystical Awakening for chamber orchestra. And these you mentioned were earlier pieces. What during your college years or something? Or where am I?
right after I would say like right after college, a couple years after college.
Something like
So
that. So
yeah, so 2001, 2005, whatever.
okay.
I don't even remember. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and again, I'm so glad that I listened to these two pieces because, again, you're such a solid orchestrator, if you
Yeah.
will. I mean, the Creation Overture is just so beautifully structured, and as I mentioned to you, it's humongous. It is not an overture; it's like a tone poem.
Yeah, it's big.
Would
Yeah.
you care to give us the tiny teensy weensy overview of the narrative of the Creation Overture, which is like, okay,
Sure.
tell us about the Big Bang, but you know.
Yeah. So this was the. So it's interesting you say that. So that this was a commission from a group called Meru. They have a website, meru.org, and they are looking into the geometric underpinnings of the implied mathematics of Genesis. And so it was I became good friends with them over the years, and they asked me to write a piece using based on the letter sequence.
Let me just jump in for one
Yeah,
second because I want to make sure that we all understand, because I'm completely with you on this, which is that the matrix, if you will,
yeah,
is there. And it's
yes,
everywhere. The matrix is everywhere, if you will, not to refer to that silly movie, but
yeah,
and it's deciphering little by little, as we've been speaking over the past few minutes. That is so fascinating. Okay, excuse me, but that just
yeah. No,
it's
that's exactly.
riveting.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so what I did is I came up with a textually based composition system where every letter it could be any alphabet, but in the Hebrew alphabet has a just a note meaning. And my idea was as long as the note meanings remain the same, then one could theoretically look at the musical text and read back the biblical Hebraic text. And so um, the system, right? The system goes that you have you can make that whatever it is, but then your choice is what is your harmonic system, and it has whatever the note is that is the letter that can only appear one time within a harmonic structure. So if you and so let's say you say I want my harmonic structure to be triads, fine. So it could be any type of triad, and I want it to be the third. But it always has to be the third of a triad, period. And that can only exist in that one spot where the note is implied by the system, by the consistency that you've or the values that you've laid out. And so what I did, I said, look, I'm going to do triads. So any particular uh, letter or note, or the note that represents the letter, could be either major, minor, augmented, or diminished. And so what happened is I basically had to uh, decide how to start the piece. And so I think if I remember, it starts on a C sharp, right? And so, but it's a low C sharp.
We're talking creation overture, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it starts on a low C sharp, and it goes. I think it's an A major chord, and then yeah, that's correct. It's a C sharp, right? And then the following letter is a C natural, but it's up higher, right? And
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha.
so this is what gets fascinating. So once I saw that, I went, well, the implied orchestration of a middle C sharp, it's right the C sharp right above C, is a large chord. You can stick, you can stick the third of a triad in the middle, only have it there if you have a huge structure around it. So the piece starts with bum bum, and it's this huge A major chord, right? So it starts with a major chord, like wow, the creation of the universe. But then what's neat about it is the next implied orchestration comes from the high C natural, which implies if you're putting the third that high, it can't be such a big orchestration
Oh,
underneath.
I
It has to
getcha. Now I
oh,
getcha.
much
Yeah,
much
very
strong.
interesting.
So from there, the entire piece worked out. Like
Uh,
everything came from the first decision. And what's neat, this is really wild. That I think there was someone researching the sound of the Big Bang.
Interesting. Go.
And
We're getting
what they
there.
found is that it was a major six. I mean, they translated it out of physics speak
Uh-huh.
into
Okay.
into. They found it was like a major six followed by a minor six. So that's basically, in a sense, how this piece starts. I didn't know that when I started it, but this piece actually starts with a major third, a major interval, and then followed by a minor interval. It's not a sixth, but it's interesting to me. And that's the other thing is like, yeah, the universe is positive, but it's also deep. So you start with a big major chord, like wow, it's amazing creation, and then all of a sudden it's like let's go to a small minor chord of the same chord, because the universe has more depth than just being everything wonderful, so to speak. There's something else
May
going
I
on.
get a word in edgewise
Sorry,
here?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Which is that that sure is esoteric. I'll tell you. I mean, it's mind twisting, boggling, and frying, and yet the base, at least from my humble mind's view, is well, it's almost the whole sympathetic chord idea or whatever, that the planet vibrates, that everything beyond our wildest imaginations is timbre. I think I've got something in the neighborhood of what's that's what I'm getting, the resonance and reverberation of the universe. That's the stunner. And then here on little measly Earth, some of us humans, you in particular, kind of figure and formulate, play, and have fun with, and emulate in a certain manner these things. I mean, help me get out of this.
It was, I'll tell you the truth. It was once I made the first decision, I made this system of how to write. You could do this with any language, actually. It's a neat system. It works. Once I made the system, and the whole system is predicated on choice. Once I made the first choice, the piece wrote itself. I mean, it was so almost eerie.
Because the formula was there, right? Once you decided the formula, that was it.
It,
Are
it
you, is that
just
what
it
you're
just
saying?
everything kind of made sense. Every decision following that
I
made
see.
sense
Okay. Yeah.
based on where things were in the orchestration, and it just all kind of, it literally just, I felt like it got eerie towards the end, because I felt like I was taking dictation. It was really weird. The piece wrote itself. It was wild.
Was that when you watched all your household pets, flee to far corners of the home? Is that how wild it got? That is craziness and
It was,
wonderful.
yeah,
And it
it was.
reminds me of another composer here in Santa Barbara, now retired, but who is deciphering musically, if you will, with the very same ideas of charting and mathematics and stuff, Mayan sound.
Oh wow.
See what I mean?
Huh.
This whole
I,
same thing.
wow, wow.
He has said, as I think you just did, you developed a formula based on all the good stuff that you know about, and he has also designed a formulaic way of maybe understanding what may be an indication of what sounds were like in that time. So I mean, the whole thing is just
Huh.
mind-boggling. So how
Well,
come people are still so stupid? I just don't understand it. I'm serious. I'm so worried about the future of
planet Earth.
intellectual progress. It's
Yeah.
scary. And we'll get through. And I'll be dead soon anyway. It won't matter.
You should live long and be well. Yeah, who knows? Look, I mean, life is a gift, and as long as it's here, it's we have to
That's
take
right.
joy in
Yeah,
it. But
that's right.
it can be worrying, and I think that's why we all do music and focus on
And are
music.
engaged. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's like it uplifts everything, it changes
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
gives you
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
perspectives,
Yeah.
keeps you open-minded, and
And the world has always been worrying.
right.
The Napoleonic Wars. I mean, do I need to list them all? It's just
Right.
always there's upheaval, and then a century later, people don't even read the newspapers of the earlier period to realize that that they too had chaos and stuff. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
a
Yeah,
little bit
so true.
exhausting, but still, I think we somehow grow from it all. Okay, I think we'd better kind of wind this thing down here. I've if I can figure it out, maybe later in my dreams, I'll figure out what we were talking about here.
Oh
I'm
man.
having a great conversation with composer Daniel S. Gill, and the conversation is intended to begin with your first quartet, Peacemaking in Three Movements from 2021, a recording on a 2023 Navona Records compilation album, Quadrants, Volume 4. I'll put all that access material up at Performing Arts Review, all that good stuff. And again, the string quartet that performed this particular piece is the string quartet Invoke. And I think they have a website. I think I was at their
They do.
website earlier, and I want to go there because they're really with it. So we started with that first, first string quartet, and then, you know, Daniel and I did a little journeying through some of the other recordings and videos that you pointed me to, so that I could get an idea of your kind of where you're coming from and what your work is about. And so I think we've pretty well covered it. It's you know beautiful music making on your
Thank you.
part, and that is
Thank you.
after all the whole point. And then there are all these other interesting areas in which you have such interest, like a Kisselhoff archive and so on. So there's all good stuff going on. I'm very pleased to have had an opportunity to meet you.
It's
So
my honor, and I want to thank you so much for taking time with my music and listening and spending time.
that's
What a
the whole
pleasure.
idea after all, and it's a crapshoot. I never quite know, but I saw that title and the peacemaking in three movements, and I thought there's got to be something there going down. Anyway.
That's awesome. You
Okay,
trust me,
many
yeah,
many
man.
thanks,
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
many thanks. So we're done. We'll see you. Bye.
Sweet.